Fritz Lang. If you're not familiar who Fritz Lang is, he's probably one of the most famous German directors ever. And embarrassingly, I've only seen one film from him, his most famous film, Metropolis. But, well, actually, no, I haven't seen one film. I've seen two now. But I've also seen his acting career, specifically in Jean-Luc Godard's Contempt. And yesterday, I filmed a short with one of my buddies before he moves, and I made a new friend, and we were talking about the movie M, and I had it on Criterion, and I was like, hey, okay, you know what? I'm going to watch this. And I did. So I'm going to get into some things. I'm not going to spoil. The first couple of minutes of this will be completely spoiler free. I will get into spoilers. Deal? Now, Criterion has a really nice Blu-ray of this, if you guys want to check it out. And I'm just going to read you guys the simple premise on the back of it, sort of get into my overall thoughts before I actually do a deep dive into the film, and sort of get into my feelings about it, because it was a very, I don't want to necessarily say pleasant viewing experience, but I enjoyed it a lot. A simple haunting phrase whistled off screen tells us that a young girl will be killed. Who is the murderer? Pleads a nearby placard as serial killer Hans Beckert closes in on little Esley Beckman. In his harrowing masterwork, M. Fritz Lang merges trenchant social commentary with chilling suspense, creating a paranormal panorama of private madness and public hysteria that to this day remains the blueprint for the psychological thriller. Now, when I was scouring Reddit, I did notice that one of the main takeaways for this film was this film did push the thriller genre forward in general. I mean, just the whole cinematic landscape. And I can definitely understand that. What you get with this film is it is essentially about a child serial killer and the hunt for that child serial killer. Now, I'm not going to get into anything else, but just the premise of that alone, and the film coming out in 1931. 1931. People wouldn't even show their knees in 1931. So to have a film about a child serial killer is kind of a big fucking deal. But what this film does is there's a very interesting line that's presented at the very beginning of the film that is in song. It's being, sung to, I guess, us as the viewer, or in general, the kids in this circle, which I'll get to that also later. But when I first heard that song, and I first heard what, I guess you could say, events were transpiring in that song, and then there's a specific line from an older woman who talks about their singing. She has like a little commentary on their singing, and it's very short, but it's so wow. It tells almost a whole story in just 2 minutes, and I find it very impressive. And again, I'll get to that in a second. Fritz Lang did The Amazing Metropolis. I mean, that's probably another one of the greatest silent films ever made. Probably one of the most important sci-fi films ever made. But Fritz Lang loved M, and I think it was his favorite film because of the social commentary that, happened when this film came out. It was a very controversial film. I heard some people say it was too long. Apparently they cut some of the ending, and that's kind of surprising to me because I feel like a lot of films were very long back then. And this film is a very tight hour and 40 something minutes. I mean, it says on the back here it's an hour and 50, but it's really like an hour and 49. I know that doesn't matter. And this might be a controversial statement, but I don't necessarily find the cinematography for this film to be too insane. Like, I do like how the film looks, but it doesn't do anything crazy. There is not a lot of headroom for some of these characters. There's some moments where the camera will sort of just be locked and a character will stand up, and then some of his head's getting cut off. And I just feel like that's just sort of the time, the filmmaking. A lot of the techniques were completely different back then. Painting wasn't really a popular thing. It really was kind of just like a locked camera most of the time. But the thing about this film that really intrigues me, and it's not even the atmosphere of the film, it's more so the visual cues that occur, especially off screen, because what Fritz Lang does is he plays with this interesting situation of sound where this is a sound film, and back in the day, whenever talkies were, sort of coming into fruition, you couldn't get characters to shut up in films. I mean, it was always talking. But what Fritz Lang did with this film is he utilized sound as a set piece for the film. He utilized sound as almost sort of like a narrative MacGuffin to sort of push the film forward. So there's a lot of very interesting experimental techniques where you hear sound, then the sound is completely cut off. You can't hear anything after that. And again, the film is just downright impressive. If you guys are looking for a classic thriller, a film that doesn't necessarily hold your hand, but it doesn't necessarily lead you astray, then Fritz Lang's M is, I think, the perfect film to watch. I think personally this is probably the best film to start with Fritz Lang, even though I am not really completely versed in his filmography. But it's good, and it's on the Criterion. Now I'm going to get into spoilers. You guys have been warned. So I was actually not necessarily warned about this before watching the film, but I was more so informed that there are some specific motifs in this film that you should be on the lookout for. And one of those are involving a circle. Now, I'm going to get into some really quick spoilers just so I can go ahead and get what this film is about out of the way, just so we can have this discussion. But essentially, you do get to see the killer halfway through the film. You know who it is, and then basically the town, these people, they come together and they go after the serial killer themselves. They wait for nobody. They don't wait for law enforcement. They do it themselves, and then they catch the guy in this really intense and very unique and interesting sort of cat and mouse game with the serial killer and this community. So then whenever they capture him, they take him to a kangaroo court, where essentially he's being scolded for his crimes, and he basically blames it on society, and he says, look, I can't help but do this. This is me. I don't want to do it, but I can't help but do it. And then he basically accuses somebody else of committing manslaughter 3 times, and nothing happens to him. And it's very interesting because while you do disagree with this guy, because I mean, let's face it, doing what he did is a horrible thing. There's no other way to put it. It's bad, like extremely bad. You can't help but sort of look at society whenever he says that. And you don't have to agree with him, and you don't have to agree with what he did, and you can still wish the worst on this man. But you can't help but look at society and sort of see how society has shaped us as a whole and how it will always continue to do so. That leads me to the circles, the motifs in the film, where you'll see a lot of people gathered in a circle. Specifically, there are some sort of vignettes where it looks like a vignette around the camera where there's kind of a circle, and then at the very beginning you see the kids in a circle sort of playing. And this is not by any means what this actually means. This is just sort of what I took away from it, and I think this is the fun thing about cinema and filmmaking, where you can sort of kind of put pieces together yourself in a way that you want to interpret them. And the way that I interpreted this was when the kids are inside of this circle and they're singing this song, which I'm going to get to in a second. So I look at these circles, these little motifs, as a sort of, I guess you could say, metaphor to what comes around goes around, and that goes back to what society is as a whole, where society sort of shapes us, and society sort of presents this this narrative of how we should live or how we should act. But then at the same time, society just sort of seems to weigh us down at times, to where we have no choice but to sort of give in and cave in to all the harsh realities of the world. And what that does is it presents a very unique aspect, not only to life itself, but this film. And when I see a circle, it just goes around, and it's this constant loop. And one thing that the kangaroo court sort of implies to this guy is, hey, if you let this guy go free, or if you let him go to an asylum, then he's going to go to an asylum, and then after that, boom, what happens then? They say he's cured, he gets out, he does it again. Clockwork, circle. And again, that might not be what the filmmaker was hinting at, but that's sort of how I interpreted it. Another thing that's very interesting about the film, and I'm going to get into a real life case, and I'm not going to necessarily touch on it too much just because I don't want to be disrespectful to anybody involved. I don't have all the information. I just know I heard it. It's very sad, but there was a specific case that happened in Canada. I'm trying to remember what part of it. I cannot remember. But there was actually 2, and it was on a bus. It was a Greyhound bus, and this guy, he kind of got... Yeah, it was pretty bad. I mean, if you're into true crime, I mean, it makes for an interesting listen, but it's nothing that you probably want to listen to. And then there's also the Don't F with Cats that also occurred in Canada as well, and they sort of, both of the, well, not the guy Don't Mess with Cats, but Don't Fuck with Cats. I mean, that's just what it's called. But the guy on the Greyhound, he basically is free now. He's free under a complete different name, identity. And the reason why I bring that up is because that's just sort of what I was thinking about when I would hear him talk and I heard this kangaroo court sort of sentence this man. And it really just does make for a very, I think, interesting conversation. This is one of those films where you really just can't help but have a conversation about it. Like if I was not watching it by myself, I probably would have had a conversation with whoever was next to me. But the one thing about this film that really freaked me out, I mean, it got under my skin when I first saw it, because it happens in like the first 2 minutes of the film. It really does sort of put things into perspective, and it's a very intriguing roadmap going forward for this film. It almost sets this film up like a map, like a GPS, like, hey, this is the route we're going. And with this one specific line, lyrics that are a part of this song, this film is not graphic. It doesn't really show anything too graphic. There's some pretty, I guess you could say sinister imagery. I guess there's one specifically with this ball and then this shadow of a man talking to this girl and then this balloon. But there is specific lyrics where the film opens up with this group of children in a circle and they're singing this song. And this song is basically talking about this guy, he's butchering people. He's got a cleaver. And what that does is that sort of tells me everything that I need to know. That tells me all the rumors that's going on. That tells me what this killer might do with his victims. And it's terrifying, but it doesn't stop there. Another thing that happens is the adults go inside and one of the adults basically comments saying, "Oh, you kids, quit singing that dreadful song. Nobody wants to hear it. Quit singing that dreadful song." Which another woman replies, "At least when we hear it, we know they're safe." That part, I literally just got goosebumps just saying that shit. It is, I think, in terms of dialogue, it's masterful. It's a mastercraft in narrative storytelling. It's a mastercraft in dialogue storytelling. And it really does set up the whole entire premise in the first two films or the first 2 minutes, where I don't think I have ever seen another film do something quite like it. I mean, you can do stuff with radio broadcasts. You can do stuff on the news. You can do that. But what this film does is it puts its victims and it puts the people that are most affected by this story, and it has them present it to you as an audience, and it kind of makes it that much more personal. Guys, I hope I did good with this video. A lot of my videos are just newer films that come out, and I usually do like a lot of ranking stuff, and I've been trying to get my filmmaking out there, which please check out my stuff. It would mean so much to me. But I sometimes just like to talk about films and sort of give my opinions on them and sort of, just try to look at stuff deeper, because the deeper that I look at films, the more I learn. And that's very important to me right now as a filmmaker. And I guess you could even say a content creator, but more so as a filmmaker. So if you guys really enjoyed this, if there's any other film that you would like to see my opinions on, please let me know. I have a lot of fun doing this. I would love to collaborate with someone else, if you guys want to talk about any films. If you're a filmmaker and you want to reach out and you've seen my stuff, please do so. But anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this. If you guys have seen M, let me know what you think of it down in the comments below. You can get it on Criterion. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.